Hello and welcome to another episode of Gotham Sound Labs. I am really excited to be here with Terence McCormack Maitland. Terence,
hi.
You are here to show us the cart as used on West Side Story. Before we get into that, tell me a little bit about what your role on West Side Story was.
Well, to start off, I helped build the cart with Todd Maitland, whose cart this is, and also Jerry Yuen. And yeah, we put the thing together and figured it all out. And I was one of the utilities for most of the movie. I boomed the last couple weeks, and I did some effects mixing. So we used the Shure Axient digital wireless system. And so we have 6 of the receivers, and then the P10T transmitter for the IFB system. And we use a WYSICOM antenna combiner for the Axient receivers, and then the Shure antenna combiner for the Axient transmitters for the IFB system. We use the
ADX1, yeah?
Yeah, and then the micro version of the same thing. And then the brains of the system is the Allen Heath SQ-5, and it all gets all the signals through Dante. And then we use the 970 sound devices, and then PixNet to control that. And then we use wireless workbench to control the Shure system.
And it's all, everything here is powered by DC, even if it has to go through an inverter. Is that right?
Yeah. So a couple things use AC. We have a big sort of marine-looking inverter on the back. This is AC. This is AC. This is the Axient digital wireless spectrum manager. And then the P10T transmitter and the
antenna combiner.
Antenna combiners also. Those are all AC. So we have an inverter on the back for that. The cart draws an awful lot of power. In its current setup.
Yeah. Do you remember how much we measured?
More than 30.
Yeah. Amps,
we only
right.
more than 30 amps. We only know that that's how high it goes because this kicks in. This would turn off if it goes over 30, right? 30.
Well, I think it's spec'd for 35. So yeah.
But so we tripped it. So then we found out that we needed to get a second one.
Yeah.
And so the second Power Star powers everything above the mixer. For us, I think, or at least for me, I won't speak for the rest of the guys, but it was a perspective shift because we've been using a Cooper for, Todd's been using a Cooper for probably that Cooper since before I was born. And, we loved it. It sounded great. It works great. It's fairly bulletproof. But now you're just pushing bits around. Right. Like after the microphone gets plugged into the transmitter, it's just moving ones and zeros. So it doesn't make really a whole lot of sense to go back and forth into another analog layer just to have more noise introduced by another A to D, D to A. The 970s are the Dante master clock. And we're not 100% if this is a real thing or if it's just a superstition. But we feel like we've had the best luck when we've turned this on first and sort of let it click in for a second. Sometimes we've had it that the Dante seems to not recognize itself, that everything doesn't end up going to where it should as quickly. It does. It's just... So normally I would turn this on and then I would go do something else. And that something else could be just putting this is where I keep my headphones. Putting my headphones on, dropping it down, doing that, maybe changing the batteries in a couple Comtechs or changing the batteries in the transmitters, just a task. To wait until, this Dante is red until the master clock is set up.
Yes.
So I'd give it a second, and then I would turn the board on.
I like that you give it its privacy.
Yeah. But again, I don't know if that's true, and I'm okay with not knowing. I don't necessarily.
It works, right.
Yeah, I don't necessarily need to find out.
That's great.
And then we just turn it all on down the row, and depending on the situation, we might not turn on all of the receivers. If we know that it's just cars driving by, maybe we only turn on the first rack that has the booms.
Right. Now, people who are coming to this system for the first time, often they're concerned when they see this density is heat. Has that been an issue? You guys shot in the summertime in New York.
It was extremely hot, and we were worried about it. And so in that, our thought was to try and avoid that, was that we actually staggered the receivers. So it's receiver 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, assuming that we would have most days where we aren't using all of these. And so we would have a receiver in between to act as a sort of heat sink for the rest of it.
Right.
But we've since spoken to Shure, and they've assured us, no pun intended, that we really don't have to worry about it.
There's an abundance of caution.
And that my understanding is that the machines would also tell us well in advance before there's an actual issue.
And so no warnings during the summertime shoots?
Haven't gotten a single one. Yeah. We did end up getting a warning on the SQ-5, but that was actually our own mistake because this comes with a cover, and we jammed it under here, and we forgot that that's actually where the fans are.
Fantastic.
Yeah, pun intended.
Yeah, that's great.
But so now we just put it up here. But the warning it warned us, but well in advance of anything failing. Nothing bad happened. There was just a little symbol up there. So now everything's on. I would have actually already opened this. And just refresh.
We ended up assigning static IPs to everything.
Yes. Right. Everything in the system has a static IP, so it doesn't have to, if you use the DCHP.
Well, yeah, so nothing is, there's no DHCP server here.
Yeah.
But if it had a look for one all the time.
Right.
And that would be like a loop that just would be.
Another thing to slow down Dante and everything else.
Yeah.
So I usually start this up to figure, to just make sure that it's actually running. I would go through and name the media.
Yeah.
And just as the sound rolls, I would set the time code. Then I would get tone, and the tone comes from the mixer. There's a signal generator, and you can it's all assignable where it goes and what gets it.
We did metadata, we did tone. What's the next thing for your day?
Then it would be the frequency coordination with wireless workbench. Make sure that everything's turned off, and then we hit scan, and then the way it goes. And the scan is actually happening from the frequency, the spectrum manager.
Right.
You can choose to have the scan happen at any of the receivers. And if you don't have a spectrum manager, you could just have wireless workbench scan from one of the receivers.
Yeah. Okay.
But we have a spectrum manager, so we use it to scan. It's nice because there are multiple scans happening at once, so you don't have to wait for one receiver to go through the whole system and look.
Yeah.
It's they're all happening concurrently.
Nice.
So you save a little bit of time. We would do it every day. What we wouldn't do every day is assign new frequencies. So we would do the scan, and so now the scan is done, and then we would we'd make sure that this checkbox is checked, and that checkbox means that when you hit analyze, this dialog comes up, and it shows you what's good and what's bad, and you can click on why. So you can see that there's duplicate frequency. We know that music and program are IFB transmitters.
Got it.
And so there's duplicate frequency, and that's it. Which is just saying that there's something else there.
And how long would from sort of like starting a scan to deploying new frequencies? How long would that take usually?
Oh, it's fast. I don't know. Under 5 minutes. I mean, the scan you saw takes maybe a minute.
Right.
And then if it's all messed up and there's a bunch of stuff, you just unlock everything, hit calculate, assign and deploy. You see if you need to move the frequencies around, the channels around to the frequencies, and then you would just hit assign. Then I would flip over to the monitor, which just shows you, it just replicates this. But one thing is that if you're sitting at the board, this is what you're looking at, not where your knees are.
Right.
So then I would flip over this, and then I would start turning things on. What's interesting about this, and what I have learned from the people at Shure who've been very responsive to any questions we have, is that, so it shows you what the RF is, and that's important, but that ultimately the quality meter, which is the purple one going across the bottom, is the thing that you need to worry about more.
Right.
Which is also sort of different than like analog transmitters, where if the RF is bad, you start losing it. You start to get other artifacts that come in.
Can you think of an instance where the RF started to drop, but the quality was okay?
Yeah. I mean, it happens if they go around the corner. Sometimes the RF has been like way down, and the quality's been fine. Yeah. So that the correlation is not 1-to-1 by any means. Yeah. And I can't really quantify that, but.
It works.
Yeah, it works. And so the other stuff that's nice about this monitor is that, the monitor page, is that it shows you how much battery there is left. It shows you this little symbol here is ShoLink, which we actually haven't talked about yet.
Nope. Yeah. What's ShoLink?
ShoLink is the system that Shure uses to have the transmitters speak to the receivers or to the spectrum manager or to wireless workbench. There's basically a wireless Zigbee router on the back. Zigbee being a protocol, 2.4 gigahertz protocol. And that's actually where the control happens. It'll push that frequency to the transmitter.
When the transmitter comes online.
When the transmitter comes online, when the transmitter comes back from being at a camper that's around the corner.
Great.
The reception on the ShoLink is quite good, but it's not better than the RF. So if you lose RF, you also don't have ShoLink.
Right.
But yeah, it's pretty amazing. The dropout is just about as bad as if you had that interference happen anyway. You know, like if something comes in and you would hear a dropout from a frequency overlap from another transmitter, but the way that it drops out, the reason why it's dropping out is to change frequencies, and then it is over. The telemetry is super accurate. The batteries last a long time. And also in this monitor and in other places on the receivers and also in the inventory list, you can RF mute the transmitters. So if you know that they're going to go away for a little while.
Got it.
Also, sometimes if the people who wear dresses, like the characters who wear dresses, they would have pockets sewn in so that you kind of have to put the transmitter in while they're putting the dress on.
Right.
And so we can RF mute it, hand it off to wardrobe.
Right.
And then it's not wasting battery while they're just in the trailer for the next hour while we're setting up. So we hand it off when it's appropriate. They drop it in when it's appropriate, and then when they come back on set, we un-RF mute them, and we haven't spent all that battery life.
Right, that's perfect.
So you don't ever change the gain on the transmitters. You can change how it outputs from the receiver to the board, and then in turn the board to the recorder. But the transmitters have enough dynamic range to encompass everything, and we would have the transmitter with lav planted next to people using a shovel. In a big wide shot, we hid the transmitter and the mic way out there to really get this shovel noise that was happening that is featured for like a moment and then not.
Right.
And it didn't change anything. So somebody was taking a shovel and digging, and we were pretty close to it, and we didn't have to change anything. And then also just picking up people walking further away, and numbers where people are sobbing and whispering and singing full out, and these people had powerful voices, and It never clipped from the transmitter, and it never clipped otherwise because we got to rehearse.
Right, because all of your gain changes are done with the audio signal after it goes from the receiver, or I mean, at the receiver and beyond.
Yeah.
That must have been really different way of working.
Yeah. I mean, it's huge to not have to, well, also with ShowLink, but once it's on the talent, you don't have to interact with it anymore. You don't have to physically go or even have a remote or anything like that. You don't have to really get close to them.
Yeah.
It's great. So if the scene gets more intense as they rehearse, you don't have to change anything there.
Right.
You can change it here.
So let's concentrate on the mixer a little bit. So we have a hypothetical scene with one boom and maybe one or two wireless out.
Right.
How would you approach that?
It's it's different from the Cooper where each fader represents something. It's physically changing what's happening inside the board. There's an electronic difference that happens when you move something on the board. There's
and one knob per function in a Cooper, which is really clear. My mind is very clear.
So in this board, and in my understanding, in most boards this size anyway, you can't change the gain on more than one channel at a time. So right now we have boom 1 selected, and so let's say boom 1's up. Right now you can change the preamp level. In order to change 2, you have to select
2
and then go and do that.
When we say preamp, we mean digital gain from the Dante signal in this case.
Yeah.
If it were the physical inputs, it would also that would be an analog gain.
Right.
I have a wire out and it's a little buried, and I want to bring up the mid range. Is that simple to do on a digital board?
Yes, but again, you have to control them one at a time. But then it becomes these menus, and so if you want the low middle or the high middle, you click that, and then you can. This is the amount that it changes. I'll just make the display a little bigger. This is the amount that it changes. This is where it's changing it on the band, and then this is how much of the band it's changing. So you can have it be really singular,
really helpful.
And you can move it around, and then you can just turn it off. This to get it clean, the in button is basically on.
Now, can you save that? Like if it's like this lav, that character, that outfit?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can save it by going to the library and then the user ones, and you can just click on Store New for whatever that if I had it named here as Pete, you hit Store New, and then it would save all the things that you choose here. And then so if you land on a EQ that you really like for that person or for the 416 versus the 50 or whatever it is, you just have that and you can be able to pull it back. You don't have to remember where it all is.
Right.
So these layers stay the same. You set these layers and you can change them whenever you want, but they're not affected by pressing these buttons. And these buttons are the mix. So by default, it's left, right. It's just the mix. And that's what ends up at mix 1 or to channel 1 in the recorder. And then after that, we have boom, which is the private line that everyone in the sound department hears. And so you press this, and it obviously all the faders are motorized, and this shows you what is getting sent to that transmitter. It's as complicated as you want it to be. You can go, or you can go one-to-one. You can have it all represent that, and it's however you want to organize it is how it will be organized.
Did you guys use Wi-Fi control of any of this?
We did. We had it sort of as like another way to keep an eye on the telemetry of all the batteries and the RF. I had an iPad that we had on the second follow cart that we just left on and plugged in, and it would tell you if the batteries were going to die. I mean, it never happened. We never had a battery die because it always lasted 6 hours, and we'd look here and we'd check there, but
it's nice to have another way into the system without bugging the
and if the mixer's in the middle of something and you somehow did have a dropout, or you saw that they were going further away, while the mixer's doing stuff, you can actually bump the transmitters up to a higher power with the Shure Channels app.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you could also, we didn't end up having it set up really, but you can also mix the board with the iPad.
You literally just take over a couple of characters if needed.
Yeah, or another mix.
Yeah.
Or if there's more fingers, if there's more people than there are fingers, you
Right.
could have another person mixing off to the side. We never did that,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you could. I know the Cooper, but I don't know the Cooper like other people do. And so I think this was maybe not as big of a shift, or like I grew up, I like computers. I like how computers work. So this stuff makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And trying to think about what the board is looking for when you want to change something makes sense. But I think it's as much as a help or a hindrance as you want it to be or can make it, because it'll do whatever you want.
Would you offer people seeing this gear for the first time reassurances that it looks more complicated than it really is?
Yes, and I would also say that for both the Allen Heath and for the receivers, there's a wealth of videos to watch online that before you get it, before you unbox it and install it, you can look at how it all works and get a little bit used to the menus of both systems, so that you're not just trying to figure it out at the board. You've had someone talk you through what all of it means, and every manufacturer uses slightly different terminology for things, and so you've had somebody from those companies like talk you through what it all does. And I just watched all of it.
Nice.
And I found it to be super, super helpful, and I'm very glad that I did.
Thank you for watching, and let us know if you have any questions. This is definitely a deep dive, and we could have gone a lot deeper, so please ask away. Thanks a lot for watching.
Bye.